G'day and welcome to another episode of The Boat Show. Tonight we're going to be checking out some kayaking and we're also going to check out what's cooking in the kitchen. To kickstart our show, we're going to go out sailing and we're going to hit the high seas to see what it's all about. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's not that scary. We're going to do the learning of the sailing and make it a little bit easier for everyone watching. I know you're scared when it comes to the ropes, the terminologies, the pulleys, all that good stuff. We'll find out how it's all done and make it a little bit easier for everyone at home. Now, standing next to me is Josh from Yachting Queensland. Now, Josh, I guess the first thing I've got to ask you is, what do you actually do for a job? What is Yachting Queensland?
It's a good question. Yachting Queensland is basically the state body for sailing. So we support the sport. We try and train the officials and the instructors and make sure everything's running properly. They got me originally just to manage their boat safe system. So they have a number of marine teachers in high schools teaching boat licensing to kids. But more recently, we've actually been taken charge of their TACAs program. So TACAs is a new program in Queensland. We're just trying to get more people active through sport and get out in this beautiful sunshine of ours.
Sure. Well, I was going to say, you know, do you just sail around and get a bit of suntan, slap a hat on, a bit of zinc, you know, away we go.
That's what most people...
Yeah, that's the fine print of it anyway.
Yeah, exactly right.
Okay, so I guess we're standing in front of, what would we call this one?
This one's a pacer. So
a pacer, okay.
It's predominantly used for kids' actual school sailing. Yep. They use it for racing against, school against school. Sure. Very good program. But this one today, it's also very good for learn to sail. So we'll go for a bit of a sail and see what we can do.
So this is, I guess, your easiest one to learn on to do a bit of sailing, because everyone will be sitting at home kind of going, I'm going to freak out a little bit. We're going to be throwing on something like, Sydney to Hobart style and go with it. So this is your safest option to kind of learn to start somewhere?
Yeah, definitely. They have a rubber bow, so we'll bounce. And like if you learn in a yacht...
Bounce if we what? Hit someone?
No, never. Not me, never, no. But or charter boat.
Sure.
But yeah, with the yachts, if you make a mistake, it could be a very big mistake and obviously painful too. These ones, a bit more forgiving. So yeah, we can get out there safely and actually learn a few decent skills today.
A little bit of confidence there. I'm not planning on going on the drink, that's for sure.
No, me
now, okay, and what about like all your ropes, your jibs, all that kind of stuff? We're going to go right into that and kind of see what we can...
Yeah, so we'll treat this as if it's a first day learn to sail class. We'll actually go through rigging the boat, all the important parts, tacking, jibing, actually get you out there and get you sailing.
Okay, and here's this thing with these is you literally just pull them on their little trailer and drag them straight into the water.
That's it. That's the beauty of these boats.
Away we go.
Yeah, we don't need a berth at a yacht club. You can just have them on top of your car in your garage and you go sailing wherever you like.
Beautiful. And fingers crossed the gale force wins and hail stays away and we might not end up in the drink today.
Welcome back to the Boatyard here at John Crawford Marine. Today we're going to talk about some tips and maintenance advice on looking after your covers and your side curtains and a bit of the terminology used to describe them. On majority of boats there's some form of weather protection in the way of covers or clears, side curtains. So what we might do before we get into this tips and maintenance section is just run over some of the definitions and clarify those. So A, you know what I'm talking about, and B, so does the producer. The four major terms you may hear regularly in trailer boat land are things of canopies, biminis, side curtains and a front clear or a front curtain. So to describe that, a bimini top is a freestanding structure, a bit like this one here, where the roof is basically parallel with the floor of the boat. A canopy comes off the top of the windscreen up on an angle and then back. So this boat here we would describe as a bimini top, side curtains, port and starboard, and a front clear that basically fills the void between the top of the windscreen and the leading edge of the front of the bimini top. So pretty simple? Righto, well let's get into some maintenance tips. So our front clears and our side curtains, as the name suggests, are clear material. They're a clear plastic or a vinyl of some description. There's all different grades of materials that are used, some really poor that don't handle the Australian harsh weather, to some that are really expensive and are really well worth the money if you can afford to justify them. However, maintenance is still all the same. Basically never ever fold your clears, always roll them up. Never crease them by folding them, otherwise you'll stretch the material on the crease line. Next time you go to install them, you'll find that you've got these crease marks or elbow marks that leave an unsightly white mark that you can't see through. So always roll your clears, but roll them dry, never roll them wet. After you've been washing down your clears, your side clears, your front clears, all that on your boat, you'll often find that with the detergents, but also just our water being hard water, it'll leave little ringlets and stains on the clears. A bit unsightly to look through in the middle of the night, but also too at dusk or dawn when trying to just peer over that windscreen. So how do we get rid of that? We recommend not to use Windex or that style of product. Some of our manufacturers say don't, some do. So let's work on the basis that we don't. So a warm water is the cheapest way out of it. Alternatively, there is a great product called Plexus, that's P-L-E-X, Plexus, which removes those hard water stain marks off the clears, but also leaves a protective film. So next time you go to wash it, it doesn't stain as bad. To join the front clear, the side curtain, to the bimini or the canopy, well, how do we do that? Well, on some boats they might use Velcro, pretty much maintenance free, but majority of our boats use a zip. Some are made with metal zips and some are also made with a plastic zip. Naturally, salt on the metal ones, eventually if you don't get all the salt off, will lead to corrosion. That way the zip gets sticky and jammed, and it's not an easy thing to fix. So how do we maintain that? Well, first, make sure you wash all the salt away from the zips, but secondly, use a silicone spray. The reason we recommend a silicone spray, it's a dry lubricant. Amongst other lubricants like a CRC or a WD-40, that's an oil base, and it could run down the zip and run over the windscreen, which could then react with Perspex. So it's a problem. You've got to think of all these issues, but we find a dry lubricant such as a silicone spray works absolutely perfect on your zips. Old wives' tales out there with candle wax and soap, hey, whatever rocks your boat. So to join our clears and our biminis together, we've discussed about zips and Velcro, but how do they then adjust or attach to the windscreen or the side of the boat? Well, most commonly you'll see a little stainless steel press studs, about 10 mil in diameter. So you've got two metal surfaces then coming together. Again, what happens if you don't get the salt out? They'll corrode and they'll jam up and stick. Next time you pull the side curtain off, it'll probably go brrr, and then you'll start pulling some of them off the side of the boat. So some simple tips there. We use a Vaseline, a clear Vaseline. The reason it's a clear Vaseline is that if it gets on your board shorts, on your thigh when you're out on the boat, you don't see it rather than a grease. So to pull apart a press stud or put one together with a little bit of lubrication with your clear Vaseline, you'll find that it's a really simple thing, and Vaseline's as cheap as chips. A lot of us now living in inner suburbia find that storing our boats under cover or underneath the house, those days are getting harder and harder. So our boats are down in the weather or under a tarp. Bear in mind, a boat that's under a tarpaulin is a bit like a greenhouse effect if the boat's still got moisture in it. So on these hot days, the boat will sweat internally, which obviously will lead to the growth of algae, mildew and mould, which is inherently a real problem on our boats. So ensure that your boat is dry. Ensure that your covers and your clears are rolled, stored and dried properly. And also allow the boat to breathe. So bungs out, a breathing flap on your tarp to allow fresh air in and the hot air out. But again, if it rains or moisture, it won't actually get back into the boat. So tip there with the tarp or that like is to make sure that the boat can breathe. Don't lock it all up, because that humidity in turn will in turn make for mildew and mould. So I hope that's helped cover a few maintenance tips and a bit of advice on looking after your clears and your bimini and your covers on your boat. So in summary, roll your side curtains and clears, don't fold them because it'll damage them. Vaseline on your press studs to maintain them on and off easily. A dry lubricant such as a silicone spray on your zips. And most importantly, store all of these things dry. Don't store them away wet. Well, that's all from me for this week's maintenance tips. Look forward to seeing you next week with a few more.